All right, let's dive in. We're tackling a question I know a lot of you have.
hmm
How to improve English speaking skills when you're flying solo, practicing on your own. No language partner, no problem. We're looking at insights from the YouTube channel English in Comfort to unpack this. Think of it as our comfy crash course in DIY language learning.
Yeah, and what's cool about these techniques is they use how our brains learn best. Instead of just passively taking in info, they make you actively engage. And that is key to owning a language.
So true. It's like just reading about how to bake a cake won't make you a baker. Got to get your hands duty. First up, English in Comfort suggests talking to yourself.
But won't people think I've gone, well, a little crazy?
You know, it might seem odd at first, but think about it. You're making this safe space to try out the language. No fear of messing up. It's like a mental gym just for your English. And it solves a big problem for solo learners, not having anyone to actually talk to. Okay, I get that. But how do I actually do this without feeling ridiculous? The video mentions describing what you're doing each day. So like, instead of just making coffee, I'd say, I'm grinding the beans, the aroma is filling the kitchen.
Exactly. You're turning everyday stuff into English practice. Sentence structure, vocab, all of it. And you can make it fit your life.
So if I love food, I could narrate my cooking like I'm on a cooking show.
Totally. The more fun and personal you make it, the more you'll stick with it. And try mixing in different tenses as you go, like I will bake a cake or yesterday I chopped vegetables. Keep it interesting.
I could see how that builds confidence too, like a practice run for real conversations. Speaking of practice, they also talk about reading out loud. I do this with scripts, but honestly feels kind of childish.
I get why you'd think that. But actors, speakers, even language learners, they all use this. Reading aloud makes you slow down, say each word clearly, and notice the music of the language, the rhythm, and how your tone goes up and down.
Huh. Never thought of it that way. Like you're training your mouth to actually make the sounds, not just get the idea.
Exactly. It helps that grammar and vocab really sink in more than just reading silently. Here's a fun tip. Try reading with an accent. Challenges you, and you explore how words can sound different.
Ooh, I like that. Maybe a British novel, posh accent, make dishwashing way more fun. But what if I trip over words or my pronunciation's off?
That's where the next tip comes in. Listening to yourself speak. I know, can be cringy, but it's like your own personal language coach right there.
Gotta admit, not my favorite thing. Why does my voice sound so different in my head?
We all kind of hear ourselves differently than we actually sound. Recording yourself shows you those pronunciation errors, how your tone goes, even those little grammar slip-ups we miss when we're just talking.
So it's not about being super critical, but figuring out what I can improve. The video says, start small, record one sentence, compare it to a native speaker.
Exactly. Use those recordings to practice specific things, like focus on the sound till it feels right.
Okay, I'm willing to try. Now, shadowing, isn't that where you talk at the same time as a native speaker? Sounds impossible.
It's tough, but think of it like intense training for your fluency and pronunciation, syncing your speech to theirs. It's not about being perfectly in time, more like getting close and noticing how they say things.
So, training my ears and mouth to work as a team. They suggest starting with short, clear audio, then making it harder.
And pick stuff you like, a podcast, a TED Talk, even a scene from your favorite movie. Gotta enjoy it so you'll keep going.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
But what if I need a little extra help with, getting the sounds right? That's where those language learning apps come in handy, right?
They're great, especially for solo learners. Lots of apps actually give you feedback on how you're pronouncing things. Super valuable for finding those errors and fixing them.
Wow. Like a virtual pronunciation coach in your pocket. Any recommendations for specific apps?
So many good ones out there. Depends what you need and like. Elsa Speak is good for pronunciation, and SpeechLing has actual language coaches giving you feedback.
Technology changing the game, that's for sure. But are there downsides to only using apps? Can they really replace talking with a human?
Great question, and it's important. Apps are awesome for targeted practice and feedback, but real conversations, they're unpredictable, full of nuances. Like, learning tennis from a machine is good for technique, but you need to play with the person to really get it.
So it's about that balance between structured practice with apps and the free-flowing nature of talking with someone.
You got it. Apps are like one tool in your language learning toolbox, not the whole thing.
So we've got talking to ourselves, reading aloud, listening back to ourselves, shadowing, and apps. That's a lot. Where should our listener even begin?
Best way is to try things out and see what clicks for you. Maybe start with one or two techniques that fit your learning style. Then add more as you get confident. And remember, consistency is key. Even just 15 minutes a day makes a difference over time.
It's all about those small, consistent habits that eventually lead to fluency.
Exactly. Like training for a marathon, you don't start by running 26 miles. You build up slowly, one step at a time.
Yeah, it's all about pacing yourself. But sometimes I catch myself trying to sound exactly like a native speaker. Like, is that even possible?
It's a goal a lot of people have. But even native speakers, they have different accents, ways of speaking. That's part of what makes language cool.
So it's less about getting rid of my accent and more about being clear so people understand.
Yeah, it's about finding your own voice within the language. And honestly, the more you focus on just communicating, saying what you mean, the less you'll worry about sounding exactly like someone else.
That makes sense. Like, I wouldn't expect someone learning my language to sound just like me, so why hold myself to that?
Exactly. It's not about being a copy. It's about expressing yourself.
That's a good way to think about it. But one thing that's hard when you're learning solo is, well, staying motivated. Easy to get discouraged when you don't have someone to practice with or, keep you on track. Any tips for keeping the momentum going?
One thing that helps is setting goals that are actually doable. Instead of, I'll be fluent in 6 months, try something like, this week I'll master this one grammar point, or I'll learn 5 new words each day.
So breaking that big, scary goal into smaller bites.
Exactly. Those little wins, they add up and keep you going. And don't forget to celebrate them. When you hit a milestone, give yourself a little treat. Watch your favorite English show, grab a new book, whatever makes you happy.
Like giving yourself gold stars. I love it. But what about those times when you hit a wall, you feel like you're not getting anywhere?
You got to remember, learning a language, it's a journey, not just a destination. There will be times you feel stuck, frustrated. It's normal.
So it's okay to feel that way, not beat myself up about it.
For sure. Be kind to yourself. And when you get frustrated, try shifting focus. Don't dwell on what you haven't got yet. Think about how far you've already come.
It's like look back at the trail you've hiked, not just up at the mountain you're still climbing.
Right. And every mistake, every time you stumble, that's a chance to learn and grow.
This reminds me, the video talks about using AI chat assistants to practice talking. What's that all about?
Oh, this is exciting stuff. AI is getting so good at sounding like a real person in a conversation.
So I could actually have a back and forth with a computer and it wouldn't feel totally weird.
It's getting closer and closer. Of course, it's not exactly like a human, but it's great for practicing different kinds of conversations, building confidence.
I can see how that would help people who get nervous talking in front of others.
Totally. AI, it's like this judgment-free zone to try things out.
A virtual practice buddy, always available.
Mhm.
But I guess there are limits to what AI can do, right?
Of course. For basic conversation skills, it's great. But the subtle stuff, like humor, sarcasm, cultural things, AI is not quite there yet.
So another tool, not a replacement for the real deal.
Exactly. Part of your language learning toolkit.
It's wild how technology is changing how we learn languages.
Hmm.
But I also think those classic methods like reading books, watching movies, they're still important.
Oh, absolutely. Getting immersed in real content like that, that's how you really understand the language and the culture.
So if I'm watching a movie in English, should I use subtitles?
That's up to you. Some people find subtitles help them follow along, pick up new words. Others like to just listen and try to understand without seeing the words.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment. What works best might change as you learn more.
Well, we've covered a lot today, from talking to ourselves to using fancy AI.
And we've talked about finding what works for you, setting goals you can actually achieve, celebrating your progress, and enjoying the journey.
But before we finish, I got to bring up something super important for language learning. Mindset.
You're right, that's huge. It's not just about the methods, it's about how you approach the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like if you start off thinking, I'm terrible at languages, you're already setting yourself up to fail. But if you're up for the challenge and believe you can learn, the whole thing feels so much more positive, empowering.
It really is. It's about having what they call a growth mindset, seeing those tough parts as chances to learn and grow, not roadblocks.
So instead of getting frustrated when I mess up, I should see it as a sign I'm pushing myself, getting out of my comfort zone.
You got it. And remember, everyone learns differently at their own pace. Don't compare yourself to others. Just focus on how you're doing and celebrate those wins, even the small ones.
It's like I wouldn't compare my running to, say, Usain Bolt. We're all on our own language learning track.
Exactly. And just like training for a marathon, learning a language takes time and effort. But it shouldn't just be about pushing hard, it should be enjoyable too, right?
That's so true. We forget that sometimes learning a language should be fun.
Absolutely. If you're not enjoying it, you're less likely to keep going. So find ways to make it fun for yourself. Movies, music, connecting with other language learners online. There's so much out there.
Okay, now I'm really feeling motivated. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, setting realistic goals. Any tips on how to do that well?
One good way is to break down your big language goal into smaller steps. Instead of, I want to be fluent in 6 months, try something like, I'll have a 5-minute conversation with a native speaker about my hobbies.
So creating stepping stones to get to that big goal.
You got it. As you reach those smaller goals, you get more confident, and that keeps you moving forward.
And it's important to remember those smaller goals can still be challenging. It's good to push yourself, but also be patient and celebrate those wins along the way.
Absolutely. Finding that balance between pushing yourself and giving yourself a pat on the back is key.
All right, I think we've given our listener a lot to think about and a lot of new things to try. Any last words of wisdom before we go?
Just remember, learning a language, it's a journey of discovery, full of challenges, surprises, and rewards. Embrace it all, be kind to yourself, and never stop exploring this amazing world of language.
I love that. And to our listener, we say, keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep those language adventures going strong. Until next time, happy learning.